And just to stick in the Big East really quickly, I'm going to defer to you first on this one. Who do you think the best player on UConn is going into
This is also a fun one. I listen. I think there's a trend, and maybe this is my personal bias. I like to go with players who have been on the team for a while and have the experience and have also scored well. So I'm gonna go with Caravan. I get it. That's not really the smartest choice to go for because there are so many other guys surrounding him that have shown better scoring opportunities, and there's even freshmen like Berlin Mullins who can be an even better version than McNeely from last year. But I loved what Karaban has always been. He's always been one of the better shooters on this team, one of the playmakers, and he's stepping up into this almost Godfather like role. He's the last player from any of those championship teams to really play. I think he actually might be the last one overall now, thinking about it too. He's going to want to be given the ball as much as possible because he knows how it works. He's been all the way there, and you need a guy like that every single time.
Yeah, no, I definitely hear you out there. He is the only remaining starter from any of those national championship teams. I do think that both Caravan and UConn as a program are a lot better, though, when he is the third or fourth option, second option on a team where you could argue he's probably the best kind of role player in the country as a second or third option. I think it's going to end up being one of Silas Demery, Solo Ball, or Terrace Reed. I'm going to lean towards Solo Ball because as strictly a three-point shooter this past year, he averaged 14 points per game just behind Lee McNeely for in terms of leading scores on UConn this past season. And I think he's gone all in on trying to develop more of his off the dribble creation and being able to attack closeouts more, get some more paint touches. He's really athletic. I think he's definitely more than capable of being able to throw down some poster dunks, which I would love to see a lot more of. Again, kind of going back to the attacking closeouts type of thing. But of course, you already know what he brings as a shooter. He's kind of this past year, they ran a lot of the similar sets they ran for Jordan Hawkins while he was at UConn for Solo, where you kind of have him as the movement shooter, guy who's going to come off of pin downs and screens, catch and shoot. But if you can improve as a playmaker, one, and then doing more and being able to get to the mid-range, just do more off the dribble, on top of adding to his defensive bag, for say, where he becomes a lot better of a defender, having all the tools of the wingspan and the athleticism to do that, then I think Solo Ball has a chance to be the best player on this team. That being said, I do think that Silas Demery definitely fits the mold of kind of playing that Tristan Newton role. Tristan Newton was probably the best player on that 23-24 team where the offense was kind of built around him. You can see a similar situation happening for Silas. And Terrace Reed could end up being what this year's Adama Sanogo for them. I would still lean Solo, though. I'm really all in on Solo Ball this year.
I'm not against the idea. I know we've talked off camera about how many points per game he's going to average. I do think he's going to be a league scorer, but I really want to just go with the experience here. And I do trust Caravan with the ball more than Solo Ball, more than Reed. Don't believe me wrong, Silas Demery can fit that role as a transfer, but UConn hasn't really been 1 year transfer, here's the ball, you get everything you want type of program. I've seen it in the past, but it's more overall time. What do you think about Braylon Mullins, though? You think this freshman can really come up and be that guy?
Braylon Mullins is interesting because he is coming in as most people consider the best shooter in this incoming freshman class. I don't know if he's even going to start for UConn this year. I know we've had several conversations on this podcast and on the Saturdays and Stores podcast on my own, where I kind of lean towards Jalen Stewart starting at the three for this year's squad. I think it's often you don't see a freshman really stand out above the rest for Dan Hurley. This past year might have been a little bit different with Liam McNeely, just considering that who's really the only guy that was capable of creating his own shot and playmaking that way. I don't think that Braylon Mullins is going to be asked to do as much as Lee McNeely was, just considering that I think all around this roster is a lot better than the one going into the last year, this past season. I would probably say Braylon Mullins, definitely, it's not out of the realm of possibility that he ends up being the best player, but I would probably say likely not.
That's honestly fine, and you don't need him to be your best player, but if he can work around your best player or best players in between, who we've mentioned, that's kind of working well. Now, if you mind, let's go over to the ACC. It's the last conference we haven't covered yet. Let's have that Louisville talk. Who do you think is going to be the Cardinals' main guy?
I like Ryan Conwell. Mikael Brown Jr. looks really, really good, and it is tough. It's honestly between those two in terms of who I was thinking of slotting in as who I think is their best player. That being said, I think Ryan Conwell just has the experience of playing college basketball already. He's going into his senior season. Really good at Indiana State, was also really good this past year at Xavier. one of the best tough shot makers, I should say, and shooters just straight up in college basketball going into next season. I'm really all in on Ryan Conwell, and I think he could end up averaging. There is the round possibility where he is both their leading scorer and best player. I will say I think Mikal does edge him out in terms of his playmaking as a passer, but in terms of just being a dude, I think I lean towards Ryan Conwell.
I honestly want to go with you so bad, but I'm going to do the cardinal rule that I literally defined before. I'm going Mikal Brown. I really, really, really like this kid. He honestly just gives me so much of a vibe. Check his tapes if you can. He's just like he's a perfect 3-and-D 2-way scorer. He fits any role that Pat Kelsey wants to give him. I love Conwell. His development needs to be studied more and more. He's a guy I could see averaging 20 a game, and I would still probably give it to Mikal Brown Jr. just because I would give him the ball. Like, if you give me this roster right now, which, by the way, I love this roster, I would give Mikal Brown the ball almost every single time because I do trust him. I get it, he's a freshman. We've seen how giving the ball to the freshman in clutch moments can be a little bit of a problem, but there's a level to it, and there's just something about it. Like, I just have to go with him because I don't have a way. I don't have a way around to say this, but he just gives me freshman of the year vibes. And I think Conwell's great. I think McNeely's great. Woolley, if he starts, is great too. But Mikal Brown is just the guy I want to see every single time.
Yeah, that's fair. I definitely hear you out there. It might as well stick around the ACC. Who do you think Duke's best player is?
This is kind of a fun one. I know there's the Dame Sarr talk, but and maybe this is once again us not knowing how international prospects work. I don't know how he's going to fit in at Duke. That's a very unique place to be at. We saw how Kaman did, which I think is kind of a nice showing, but Cameron Boozer's number 3 prospect. We know how he is. I think you kind of have to give it to him, and I don't really know if there's really any argument otherwise.
Yeah, I'm definitely in the same boat where I don't think that's really too much of a discussion to be had here. Cameron Boozer's, who we think is top 3, the third best incoming freshman in college basketball this year. He's definitely one of the 3 guys who really are the only 3 that have a legitimate chance, him, Darren Peterson, and AJ DeVance, to be the number 1 pick in next year's draft. And I do know that they do have a lot of talent on paper, just between Isaiah Evans, who has a chance to make a really big leap. Same thing with Caleb Foster. You're also bringing in Cam's brother, Caden Boozer, along with Nicholas Kamania, who I hear is one of the best shooters in this incoming freshman class. So you can definitely see Kamania filling the Con Knipple role. Dame Sarr is another interesting aspect of this conversation to have, just considering that he's coming from overseas. We don't know too much about him. He could just come in and blow everyone out of the water, really just unexpectedly. But in terms of what I saw from his stats overseas, granted, he is playing against professionals, playing for FC Barcelona, but they weren't the best, and I would still lean Cam Boozer. I think he's the best player and best pro prospect.
Yeah, and I will say I'll throw a bone for Isaiah Evans. He's one of the few returning freshmen on this list. I've seen a lot of progress with him in the gym. I think there's a place where he could be the better guy. I don't know if that's really possible right now, but there's a lot of open space in this roster compared to last year. If he's given more minutes and given the ball more, I could see it happening. I just don't think that's how Shire works. Shire loves to give the ball to his top freshman. We saw last year with Coop, and I don't think Isaiah Evans is really meant for that role either. I'll trust in Boozer for the time being.
Yeah, I think Boozer's definitely the safe bet there. Now, definitely one that could go a lot of different ways. Illinois is a really unique conversation to have. I think there's 3 guys who have a legitimate chance to be the best player. Those being Andrei Stojakovic, Tomislava Vizic, and Mihailo Petrovic. I think I personally go with Andrei Stojakovic just because I feel like the vision is there for him to kind of fill that Kasparis Yakuchonis, Terrence Shannon Jr. role of having a high impact not necessarily first year, but transfer like Terrence Shannon, freshman, and Kasparis, who's just really dynamic with the ball in their hands, could do a lot playmaking wise, could do a lot scoring wise. Andres averaged near 18 points a game this past year at Cal. It's definitely due time they stepped up to a legit contending Power 5 program. I can definitely hear conversations, though, or arguments, I should say, for both Tomislav and Mihailo.
Yeah, honestly, and this is more or less just me, I think Stojakovic blows them all away. This guy is not a project player. He is the real deal. I loved him when he was at Cal. He was the main guy at Stanford as well. I get it, they weren't competitive teams, but this guy played competitive in a way that you don't see. He has, that NBA blood from his father, and putting him with a bunch of other Balkan guys, say less. This is the guy you want to see with the ball. I do want to throw some love out there for Killen Boswell, but he's more or less just that side piece guy. He was great last year. He was great at Arizona too. I don't think he really rises to the role just because we're getting the Ivica brothers and Stojakovic, but I kind of don't really have an argument for anybody but Andre.
Yeah, I will say I do definitely think Andrei Stojakovic needs to become more efficient and consistent as a shooter from 3 point range for him to really be that guy for Illinois this year. I think Petrovic is really an unknown factor, just considering he's one of the many international guys coming over on this roster for Brad Underwood this year. But if he runs the point to a high degree of success, then he could definitely end up being the best player. Tomislav has the experience in the program, definitely going to be the anchor down low next to his younger brother, Big Z, Zvonimir. So there's definitely room for him to be the best player too, but I would definitely go Andre.
I can definitely believe that. I will say, and keep a look at his track record at Stanford. He averaged a little bit under 8 a game. He played 3 less games and averaged 18 at Cal. I just think that there's something about that alone that gives you a sign that he is such a big deal in the sphere right now, and he should not be ignored. Honestly, on any level, I would give him the ball. I hope he shoots better from the 3 point line. I do agree with you on that. But if he keeps up with what he's doing right now, I don't think there's much to stop him.
Most definitely. And going back over the ACC, throw a little bit of a more fun, maybe not necessarily a team that is going to end up being a contender, but North Carolina. I think there's a lot of different ways you could go with this. Hubert Davis is going to need someone to come out and be that guy. Who do you think that's going to be this year?
This is a tough one. And I don't really know because we've seen times in the past where the center is more valued. That's Armando Bacot, if you remember. And then RJ Davis, the point guard role, was more valued last year. I kind of lean towards Henry Vazar. He was paid a bat to come over to North Carolina. And I get it, he wasn't really the type of guy that you would expect from Arizona, but he had a great year. And I think that the progress is starting to show with a guy like him. He is a project player. Would give open some ties for Seth Trimble.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go Seth Trimble. I like Vasar a lot. I've also heard a lot of good things about Caleb Wilson, their incoming freshman. A lot of people in the camps of North Carolina, people who cover UNC basketball, have said some really good things from what they've seen out of practices that they've sat in. Hubert Davis has even come out and said that he thinks Caleb Wilson might be the best freshman he's coached. So that's definitely really big praise from a lot of different people. I still lean Seth Trimble. I do think that he is maybe breaking out a little bit late. We thought last year was going to be the year Seth Trimble really broke out and became one of those big household names in Chapel Hill. I think that's going to be this year. I'm fully expecting Seth Trimble to really figure things out. Now is kind of almost the number one option. Of course, Caleb Wilson still has a chance to be that, maybe Henry Vasar as well. But I think Seth Trimble just really has all the tools, the shot-making ability. Yeah, he wasn't that guy this past year, but I definitely see the vision for him to kind of be that guy and fill in the shoes of RJ.
Definitely. And actually, let's hop over to the other place in the research triangle. Let's look at NC State for a bit. They've definitely reloaded well. I get Darren Williams is supposed to be the main guy, but there's a deep set of players that can rise up to the occasion here.
Yeah, I mean, there's again a lot of different ways you could go with this. As for pretty much every team we've named so far today, I want to go with Terrence Arsenault. I think he's had to sit behind a lot of players, really talented guys at Houston for the last 2 seasons. Now going into what is his junior season, I believe, he has a chance to break out. I know you mentioned Darren Williams. Darren Williams has a chance to probably end up being the best player, but I kind of want to bank on who I think is going to make the biggest leap and kind of just come out of nowhere. You're also bringing in Trey Holloman, and several guys from McNeese following Will Wade there to NC State. But I just think Arsenault, really athletic player, at times for Houston, definitely was really made some really timely and important shots for them in over the past few seasons, especially this past year. He only averaged 8 for Houston this season, but I definitely think he has a chance to up his scoring by a lot, getting up to the 15, 16 point per game mark. I definitely think he's more than capable of doing. So I'm probably going to go Terrence Arsenault here.
Yeah, and I can definitely see it. And while I would lean Darren Williams, he's never been the main guy. When he was on at Texas Tech last year, that was J.D. Toppin's team, and it felt like that almost the entire year. He was the second fiddle. And I don't hate the option of him being second fiddle, but I feel like pushing him to the first spot might be too much. So I'm going to take my money where my mouth is. and I'm going Kadir Copeland. Actually, this has been
We'll take.
Will Wade's guy
Yeah.
for 2 years now. And I get it, there's a big change from McNeese to NC State, but he did great against Clemson in that 68 round 68 game. I think he definitely merges into that role. Don't get me wrong, I like the Terrence Arsenault pick. I even like the Ben Allen Lubin pick, but give me Kadir Copeland. I like the transfer.
Yeah, Guadier's done a lot as a glue guy. He does a lot of the little things that maybe don't end up on the box score. So I can definitely see him being the best player when you look at it from that perspective. Just what he brings as defender, passing wise, getting on the ground for loose balls, rebounding. He did that at Syracuse. He did it last year, at McNeese. Fully expect him to do it once again. Probably going to start for a third straight season for Will Wade. So I could definitely see the pick there. Might as well. I know I just mentioned them as one of Quadier's former homes. So who do you think the best player on Syracuse is going to be this year?
This is a fun one. I'm so glad you mentioned it. I want to say Keenan Anthony so bad. I just really, really, really want to, but I'm going to stick with JJ Starling. He's proven it himself. He really has 18 a game last year. This is a guy you just shouldn't he shouldn't do bad next year. I feel like there's just no way he drops off, even if it is a few points per game, because he is getting guys like Sadiq Wyatt and Keaton and Nathan George to join him on this team. It feels like he has to be that person. He's been with Syracuse in the bad times, and these are now the good times for Syracuse, in my opinion. So I feel like there kind of has to be a moment where he steps up and delivers for the Orange that they haven't had that in such a long time.
Yeah, I'm also going to go JJ Starling here too. I do think that it is due time that JJ Starling gets his flowers. He's kind of always been, I don't necessarily know if second fiddle is the right word, but I think he's been very much under talked about across the sport. His first year at Syracuse, after transferring from Notre Dame, he was kind of one second fiddle to who was it? Forgetting off the top of my head who it was that year. But yeah, I mean, he played second fiddle really well that year. And then this past year, like you mentioned, average 18 per game as kind of the number one scoring option. While I think a lot of people were more so focused on Donovan Freeman, who was the 5-star freshman they had this past season, who was running it back for his sophomore year. Now you have Kanaye and Anthony. You're adding Sadiq White as well into the mix. Kyan, I'm really big on. I do think he's going to be a 2-year player as opposed to a lot of people who do think he might end up being one and done. I think there's going to be an adjustment period for Kyan, and I think he's going to come along later in the season. But JJ Starling, he's a hometown kid, grew up in the Syracuse area. He's going to put it on. He's going to leave everything out there for his senior year, I definitely believe. I think he has a chance to lead the ACC in scoring this year. And I do think that the mentality for Syracuse as a program is a lot different than it has been the last few seasons. And I fully expect JJ Starling to be a big reason why.
Yeah, I think that this team will make the tournament this year. And if there's going to be a guy who brings them finally back to March Madness, it should be JJ Starling. I would love for Keaton Anthony to be that guy as well, because like father, like son, seeing Syracuse anywhere near the Natty would make me so happy. But regardless of the matter, I think Syracuse needs him to be that guy.
Yeah, and quick shout out to Judah Mintz. That's the guy who I forgot. Judah Mintz.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was questioning that too.
And just one more team to throw out there: Michigan State.
This is a fun one. It's hard to say because even last year it felt questionable. I get it, Richardson became that guy, but it took a little bit of time. You had guys like Trey Holloman surrounding him and Jeremy Fierce, who I think will end up being the guy, but I don't know from the get-go. I think Kohler might be relied on a lot more than he was last year, especially considering Zapala has now graduated onward. But there are some places for guys deeper in the bench last year to rise to that role. Izzo loves using guys from all over the place to be his main dude, but I'm going to lean Fierce.
Like you said, there's a lot of different ways you could go with this. Fierce is a good option. You also have to consider Cohen Carr, who I know you are really, really high on going to the season.
I am high on Carr. Honestly, it's hard to say. I might change the Carr now thinking about it again. His development has looked so good, but I have questions on how good of a scorer he is.
Right.
I get it. He has the crazy, flashy dunks, but someone's got to throw it up there for him. That's probably where I'm seeing Fears in that role, but it's more or less, I think, like the way I'm kind of viewing it is kind of how last year was. You need to find out later on the season. This won't be from the get-go with Michigan State. It never is. They always get hot later on this season. That's how Izzo likes to work. But You know what? Give me Cohen Carr. Give me Cohen Carr. I'm going to take on his development and him being a close to 13 or 14 point per game guy. And I think he's going to be what Michigan State needs to get back in track.
Yeah, I'll definitely like you sticking with your gut there and going Cohen Carr. I think it's going to be one of Trey Fort or Jackson Kohler. Jackson Kohler, if Michigan State can get the version of Jackson Kohler in terms of how he played against Illinois this past year in that Big Ten matchup in the regular season play, then I think Jackson Kohler does end up being the best player on this team. Just what he did that game, being able to space the floor, hit the 3-point shot, do damage down low on the offensive glass, and getting a lot of putback opportunities. I think it's going to be so crucial for them, even if he doesn't end up being their best player. I think I'm going to go Trey Fort. I've heard a lot of really, really good things from people who cover MSU basketball about him. I think he has a big chance to be one of the best impact transfers across the nation next year. And I do think the scoring numbers at his previous spot, it's hard to ignore that. Definitely can't overlook it. I don't know if he's going to be able to replicate at the Big Ten level, but I definitely would have put it past him. I think I am going to go Trey Fort.
Yeah, and honestly, I do like how you do mention Kohler and his previous works. He had 23 in the game against Illinois, if you want to know, and he had 17 against Auburn in the Final Four. So this guy is not against standing up in the big moments, but maybe my hype gets ahead of me. I'll go with Carr tentatively, very tentatively.
Yeah. So I think this is pretty much going to wrap up everything we had on who we think the best players on some of our favorite teams across the sport are going to be going to next year. Really excited to see a lot of these guys ball out. Hope some of our predictions are right. I'm just looking to see some big time stars emerge for these programs this year. It's going to add to what should be a really, really exciting college basketball season. But again, engage with our videos in any way you can. It really does help at the end of the day. Until next episode, see you all next time.